Thanks for joining me on episode 478 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Gina Johnson from Synergy Mindset Coaching. I encourage you to find your own journey from surviving to thriving. And one way to be inspired to do that is by listening to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mader.
And the same thing's true for relationships. You can't pay attention first to what you get. You have to look at it as, what are you giving? I'm giving of my time. I'm giving of my energy. I'm sincerely pouring into someone with no expectation of return. And that openness of spirit is what allows it to work.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's episode about investing in yourself by stewarding your time, I talk with you about why you have to carve out time for relationships, why that's not about what you get, but what you give, and how this time allows you to actually grow yourself and grow your relationships. As we talk about stewarding your time, wouldn't it be great if you could support this podcast and do it without just taking too long? Turns out you can't. All you have to do is use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon when you're ready to make a purchase via Amazon, and a small commission will come back to support the show just that quick. If you enjoy the show when you are ready to buy from Amazon, just use inspiredstewardship.com/Amazon. We've talked before about how one of the areas where a lot of times we neglect our time is in the area of relationships. The time we spend building relationships with others, the time we spend in relationship with others. Many people end up getting focused so much on getting things done. Oftentimes when we think about productivity, we tend to label it with task around work and effort. But one of the things I like to point out to people is productivity is about more than that. Productivity is really about getting not more done, but getting the right things done. And for a lot of times and a lot of people, that ends up meaning that you need to carve out time and dedicate that time for relationship. You actually need to put and schedule family time on your calendar. Block it off, commit to it, make it something that's sacred, something that if it changes, you keep it in place. Make sure that you actually carve time out for friendships, to go have that cup of coffee with a friend. Make sure you carve time out for finding new friends and networking with others. It's about actually making a commitment to spend that time on relationships. There's kind of two kinds of people in the world. There's people that tend to focus more on task, and then there's people that tend to focus more on people first. And by the way, one of these is not good and the other's not bad. This isn't a value judgment. It's just an observation of how people view the world. And people that are people focused have a tendency to focus first on relationships. But that actually means that sometimes they can get off track and they can end up spending time with the wrong people, the people that they really don't want to commit to spending time with. They can get dragged into relationships that don't help them and don't help the other person and actually end up causing problems for them. So they have to be careful to not allow their relationships to derail other relationships. People that are task-focused have a tendency to focus first on getting more done and getting stuff done. And so they have to be very careful to allow themselves and actually force themselves with some level of discipline to focus on actual time for people. Keep in mind, when you're looking at this time, It's not about what you get out of it. You're not looking at this for an ROI, a return on investment. You'll get an ROI, but that's not the focus of it. That's not why you do it. It's kind of like when you do something for someone as a gift, you should look at it and think about what are you going to get in return, even though oftentimes you will get something in return. Not necessarily a gift, but something, a sense of gratitude, a feeling, an emotion, the ability to actually focus on others. And the same thing's true for relationships. You can't pay attention first to what you get. You have to look at it as, what are you giving? I'm giving of my time. I'm giving of my energy. I'm sincerely pouring into someone with no expectation of return. And that openness of spirit is what allows it to work. By carving out time and having an open heart and an open mind and actually just sitting down with someone and being there with them, with no expectation of return, you'll discover that you get way more than you give. That time will pay off in benefits in spades down the road. That time will allow you to grow in your relationships. That time will allow your own spirit and mind and sense of gratitude to grow. And there's study after study after study that shows that stuff is not what makes people happy. Relationships make people happy. And the relationships have to be one, though, where it's not looking at it as something that it gives you. Instead, it's a relationship that's simply there. It's reciprocal. It's open. It's honest. But it's not about what you get. That time will allow your heart to begin to shift and change over time so that you begin to grow in your ability to form even deeper relationships. If you're a task-oriented person, that time will allow you to recognize the value of people and relate to them better and communicate with them better and understand them better and have a better relationship with them. And if you're people-oriented, that time will allow you to begin to notice the difference between the people who you really need to build a relationship with because they pour into you and you pour into them, and it's a real connection, and the people who perhaps are just trying to take advantage of you or who are just asking for so much from you that you can't give it in a healthy way. The people that are damaging your identity and in your integrity and who you are. Spending this time will allow you to grow yourself and your own heart. It will allow you to grow the connection with others and the relationship with others. And it will allow you to grow how you look at the world and make it much closer to the way that we are meant to view the world. Thanks for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you like this episode on the stewardship of time, be sure to sign up for our Stewardship of Time Tips series by going to inspiredstewardship.com/time or texting 44222 Time Tips, and that'll get you our best tips on stewarding your time. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.